the heart and soul behind every business. Stories. Welcome to Business Story of the Week, hosted by me, Joshua Laurie. From setbacks to comebacks, from tragedies to triumphs, we inspire entrepreneurs through conversations that matter. Witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. Whether it's your career, business, or life, your success is always one story away. This is Business Story of the Week. And welcome back, folks. Welcome back to Business Story of the Week. I am your host, Joshua, and our question for today is: how crucial is communication? And can communication really skyrocket your career, skyrocket your income? Why do we need communication in all of this, right? And our guest for today is, I believe, the perfect guest to answer that question. Ty Hoesgen is the CEO of Advanced Growth Institute, where he helps entrepreneurs and professionals master the art of communication. Ty is one of the most sought after communication coaches in the world and is the international best-selling author of the renowned book Elite Communication Skills. Ty specializes in helping professionals communicate powerfully so they can earn more money, advance their careers faster than their peers, and impact more people. Rooted in his own journey from a shy, awkward farm kid to a communication expert, Ty's relentless dedication to mastering the art of communication has transformed the lives of over 36,000 individuals. And today, ladies and gentlemen, he shares his insight and perspective and his experience with us today. Ty, thank you for coming on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent, Joshua. That is quite the introduction. Really appreciate you going through that. And thank you again for having me as a guest here as well. I'm a big fan of the show, so I'm looking forward to speaking with you.
Well, Ty, thank you so much. And it's quite an honor, of course, for a renowned author like you to say that you're quite the fan of the show. And I'm quite interested in what you do and everything that you've written on the book as well. But, Ty, before we really get into all of this, we always ask this, and I always start this off as a journey, the origin story of Ty. Your journey from a shy farm kid, it doesn't, it, I don't see it now, my friend, like you to a world communication coach. It's quite inspiring. Was there any point, like any pivotal moment experiences as a child, as a farm kid? Share to us what motivated you to start mastering communication and how it led you to founding Advanced Growth Institute. What is the story of Ty Hoesgen?
Well, when I was a kid, my favorite thing to do was climb trees. Now, why was this my favorite activity? Well, the top of the tree was the least likely place to run into someone and have a conversation with them.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you mentioned, small town farm kid, and the nearest town actually only had 800 people.
Right.
That was actually 800 more people than I would have liked because I loved being alone. I loved
Okay.
avoiding people. I loved spending time just roaming through the trees.
Mm-hmm.
I was the definition of kind of the lone wolf when I was a
Wow.
kid growing up,
Mm-hmm.
and very shy, very awkward, didn't really like speaking to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with my family, do you have any siblings, Joshua?
I have There's three of us, three siblings, uh, two other siblings basically. Yeah,
Are you the oldest? Are you the
I
youngest,
am the
middle?
middle child, and with all the stereotypes that come with the middle child.
So you didn't get much attention, is what you're saying.
Yes, well, that is well, yeah. As again with all the stereotype, yes, that is true. I've had to. They say middle child have had to raise themselves, so to speak.
Well, in my family, I was the younger brother,
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
I had an older sister. So my older
Mm-hmm.
sister, her name was Alana,
Right.
and she was actually the opposite of me. So
Oh,
she was a
interesting.
bubbly extrovert. She loved to talk, and I remember growing up, whenever somebody would ask me a question, Alana would sometimes jump in and say, "Let me tell you what Ty thinks. I'll tell you
Oh.
what Ty thinks."
Oh
And she
wow.
would just jump right in and answer those questions.
Oh.
Now, I I actually liked this at the
Hmm.
time because I wanted to avoid speaking. I actually
Yes.
didn't want to talk. And it didn't seem like
Wow.
a big deal at the time. Growing up, you don't think about that stuff too much. But then as you get older, and then especially when I entered the professional world,
Right.
that's when everything changed. And I realized just how deathly afraid I was of having these types of conversations with people. Now, the
Mhm.
only job I could get right out of college, right out of university, was selling life insurance. That was the only job I could get. So
Wow.
the
Okay.
only way you can make money in
Hmm.
that job is if you can speak.
Right. Of course.
And I was petrified to have those
Okay.
difficult
Okay.
conversations with people. I remember there was one specific experience where I had a couple that was sitting across from me, and as part of the application process for life insurance, I had to ask them what year they were born is. I think, yeah, full date of birth.
Okay.
And I remember at this point just staring at them blankly, just frozen,
Oh my.
and the words just weren't coming out of my mouth.
Mhm.
I don't know if anyone listening has experienced anything similar where you know what you're trying to say, but the words are
Right.
just kind of stuck
Yes. Precisely. Hmm. Hmm.
and you just kind of freeze up.
Uh-huh.
And it's frustrating in that moment.
Of course.
Now, the fear there and the worry is really, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I mess this up? What if they
Precisely.
don't like me? What if I stutter?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was really the experience that I lived in every single day.
Every single day.
So there's another
How
time
did you?
actually, I remember I had to it was just a really simple presentation in
Right.
front of my
Right.
colleagues. And
Hmm.
it got so bad, I vividly remember actually having to go to the bathroom and throw up before
No
the
way.
meeting
Oh my
because I
goodness.
was so nervous. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. You were
And
kind of forced into that situation, and you have to figure it all out. Oh my goodness. How did you even get past that? How were you able to overcome all that?
when it really sucked, and it didn't just suck because I was nervous and I couldn't speak and throwing up and all that, but it really sucked because I just felt hopeless at
Right.
that point.
Hmm. Hmm.
I felt like my skills and my traits were set in stone.
Right.
And I remember actually going home that day. Growing up, I was under the impression that, men are not supposed to cry, they're supposed to hold it in. And so I remember
Of
driving
course.
home from work just holding back the tears.
Right.
And I
Right.
had a couple of roommates at the time, so I managed to keep the tears at bay until I got to
Hmm.
my room. But then the
Hmm.
second I got to my room, I remember just going straight to my bed and just bawling my eyes
Oh
out.
my goodness.
And it
I'm
was in
so
that
sorry about
moment,
that. Uh-huh.
yeah, it was in that moment. I remember just thinking to myself, like, why am I like this?
Mm. Mm.
Like,
Mm.
why is this so hard for me?
Mhm. Mhm.
And sometimes I think you do really have to hit kind of that rock bottom point
Right.
to realize that it's time to change. You got to do something different. And that was that point for me where I just
Wow.
realized I couldn't keep doing what I was doing because if your
Right.
life depends on your ability to speak,
Wow.
and whether you're throwing up before meetings or you're just not feeling as confident as you'd like to be in some of those situations when you're
Uh-huh.
speaking, your life does depend on speaking, and you can't really
Right.
afford to stay the
Right.
same. So the first lesson I really learned was first, I just had to take responsibility. I had to realize that I had to start taking some steps, had to start doing something differently so I could
Yes,
get
of
better.
course. So
So that was really the
it's
moment that I knew I had to change.
right, and it's quite, of course, like you said, you're kind of forced into this job and this opportunity where you need to speak up, something that you didn't like to do, something that you didn't couldn't imagine yourself doing, but as insurance, salesman, basically, how do you even talk to people, or like just even if you're not selling, like it's not even just about selling, right? It's like the typical connecting with people and just like just not even with customers, just like colleagues and just just normal day-to-day interaction. Sometimes it freezes people up, and it's quite a common occurrence as well to for people to feel like, oh man, this is just who I am. I probably won't ever change, and there's no reason for me to change. But like you said, you really can't afford to not be able to speak. It's quite the transformation that you went to when it comes to transformative communication, right? Because you've had to transform yourself first. You emphasize the importance of speaking or communication in our lives. Confidence is important, charisma and clarity in communication. Not everyone can probably have confidence and charisma, but maybe we could all have clarity and all that. But how do you put together these elements to contribute to professional success and career advancement? But really, I feel like it has more to do with you personally as a personal development aspect of being able to have communication that is transformative, not just for others, but for yourself. How do you get people to, emphasize the importance of all these elements in order to have more effective communication?
First of all, I want to touch on something you said at the beginning,
Right.
which is important for us to talk about, and that's maybe everybody could learn to speak with clarity, but maybe not everyone could
Okay.
get that confidence or that charisma.
Interesting.
And what's really
Please.
interesting is
Please.
that after I actually started working on my communication, I was doing all the research, I'm doing all the learning, I'm experimenting, I'm practicing. At this point, I had just gotten obsessed where I decided all of my spare time when I'm not working at my job is going into learning how to become a better communicator.
Wow,
So
interesting.
it was at this point I started learning and implementing some of these different things. So, different ways of using my voice to sound more interesting when I'm speaking,
Mm,
different body language techniques so I
mhm,
could look
mm.
and feel more confident. There was different things I
Wow.
learned with my breathing so that I could relax myself more and be in a
Okay.
better state of mind when
Mhm,
speaking. And what's interesting is that after implementing some of those things and practicing figure out what works and what doesn't, I remember giving it was a similar type of presentation to the one that I had given earlier, the one where I'd thrown up before.
okay. Huh.
But after this presentation, I had a couple people come up after, and I remember one of the comments was, "Oh, that was actually kind of interesting to listen to." And then someone else said, "You seemed a lot more confident that time. Like, what happened?" And so now I was hearing confident and interesting. And those were words that I would have never associated with myself before. And so one of the biggest lessons I learned about communication when I was on this journey, I started really advancing in some of these areas and developing
Mhm,
some of these skills, is that these words that we attach, even these personality traits, they're really just a combined set of behaviors and actions that make people label us a certain way. Okay,
wow.
so
Okay. Okay.
for example, if I am presenting myself with confidence with my body language,
Mhm,
with my voice, with my
mhm,
facial expressions, with my words,
mhm,
you are going to say, Ty seems confident. Now, internally, we build confidence as well as part of our coaching, but if we're just talking about labeling personality traits,
mhm, mhm,
even charisma. Well, what's charisma? Charisma is doing a set of certain things, the way that we speak, the way that we act, so that people label us as charismatic. Maybe it's making eye contact, being a good listener,
mhm.
being a captivating speaker. It's showing up and owning the room when you walk in. But all these things are just learnable techniques, learnable actions that a person can develop. None of these things is inherent in such a way that it's impossible to gain for yourself. Even just being likable. Most people say that I'm pretty likable now, but really I just do certain things that make people think I'm likable. I put effort into listening. I try to show people that I care. I make eye contact with them. I show open body language. I give all these signals and do all these things that make people associate me with a trait. So the really big lesson here is that you can pick and choose how you want to be perceived
Oh,
and how you want to feel when you are building these communication skills. It's just
very interesting.
knowing what to do, how to practice, and then implementing it enough times where you eventually don't have to think about it anymore. And that's one of the things that we do in the coaching with
Uh-huh.
the
Uh-huh.
three C's: confidence, charisma, and clarity. And anyone can learn those if you
Wow.
actually know how to implement them.
Wow. Okay. So first off, that's a very interesting concept because not everyone's going to be like I'm not really confident. I'm not a confident person. But what you're telling me, which makes a lot of sense, by the way, is that if I am able to, just kind of like come into my own when it comes to communicating, these aspects or these values or um these these improvements or how people perceive me, they will come naturally if I master communication. And I think now that looking back into that, and looking back into how people, the way we perceive people, the way we look at them, we look at the most confident people in the world, it makes sense that you know you get to pick, like you said, like how people perceive you with the way you communicate. And I can see why anyone would feel confident, of course, and have that charisma, because it's a skill, right? It's something you develop. It's not something you people are probably born with it, of course, but it doesn't mean you can't develop it. You can definitely develop it, just like a muscle. You can definitely, absolutely practice it. I love that. This is what you call, transformative communication as well. And it transforms personal or something internal in you as well, because it gives you more self-confidence, not just to confidence to speak to others, but imagine being able to shape your personality as well. That must bring really a lot of transformation into your lives. But Ty, uh, level with me here a little bit, because there are a lot of audience and listeners, I'm sure, who are very nervous, very anxious. If we've ever been on stage as well, I'm sure you have been on stage as well, and for audience and listeners who's been on stage, you know what it means to have stage fright. It's always there, it never goes away. But even for people who are experienced of going up there, but you've had to overcome this. You've had to overcome the nervousness, the anxiety. Yours is pretty extreme based on your story. So I'm sure our audience and listeners here, you're the perfect person to give these advice. In high pressure situations or around important people, what are some effective strategies that you teach to help individuals overcome nervousness and speak with confidence?
This is a good question. I'm going to start by saying that first, recognize that this is also something that can be improved and can be fixed. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, on average, the average person that starts one of the coaching programs that we go through, they're self-evaluating their confidence, as well as I evaluate them in several areas, but they
Okay.
self-evaluate on average at about a 4 or 5 when speaking in those high pressure situations. Okay.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
So not everyone is struggling with confidence talking to their friends, talking in
Of
casual
course.
work situations, but it's more so those uncertain situations we're put on the spot or we're on stage, we're given a presentation. And so on average, they're at about a 4 or 5. Now, after 3 to 4 months, that's the average time, they analyze themselves at an 8 or a 9. That's about an average. So the average increase is about 80%
Okay.
in
Okay.
confidence. Now, of
Huh.
course, there's all these things we talked about with our voice and our words and our speaking to be perceived by others
Right.
as being more confident. But if we're
Uh-huh.
still nervous and stressed and we don't feel confidence ourselves, that's not really the best, right? We want to
Right.
both look at and be perceived. We want to both look at and be perceived by as confident by others and feel it ourselves.
Okay.
So before I jump in, just know that you can, in a few months, become an 8 or a 9 to where you're basically ready to show up to any situation, like whether you're unprepared or you're on the spot, with a higher level of confidence. So first, I just want everyone to know it is possible. Trust me, I've done it many, many times with many different people, so it's totally possible.
Okay.
The confidence in those situations, there's many different things that we work on. I'll cover 2 of the most popular ones.
Oh, please.
Okay. So the first one is our breath. Now, this is for anyone that just wants a quick, like, what can I do in the moment, right beforehand? Maybe it's totally unexpected and something came up. There's something called the physiological sigh, which is a very specific breathing technique.
Right.
And it's a double inhale through the nose. So one long inhale through the nose, and then you add a little short inhale through the nose, and then an extended exhale through the mouth.
Okay.
So
what does that
double
short
inhale through the
inhale
nose.
does?
Yeah, long inhale through the nose, then a little short inhale to sip a little bit more air with your nose, then a long exhale through the mouth.
What does that short inhale does? What does it do?
Well, that's a good question. It adds just that extra dose of, I don't remember the exact science behind it. I'm going to be honest with you.
Right.
I don't remember what that exact second nose inhalation does. I was going to say oxygen or carbon dioxide, but I don't remember which one.
Okay, it's
But I
quite
do know that it
interesting
works.
though. And with meditation, practices, it's quite common to also say like you pause at the top. Some of them they tell you to stop, stop the breath, and then before you exhale, it does kind of make sense to also. Some of them also does say it's a quick inhale. But that's interesting that you apply that in communication. Tell us more.
For sure. So as you're doing that, this is very popular. You can close your eyes and visualize one of 2 things. You can visualize the event going well. We've probably heard of this, right? We visualize something good happening. But what also works extremely well, especially if you're right about to go on stage, right about to give a presentation, think about something that brings you joy. So it can be your pet, it can be a loved one, maybe a vacation spot. Because if you're in that state, it's a very relaxed yet uplifted state. It gives you the perfect blend of being calm, but then still having energy, right? Because you don't want to be in such a meditative state that you're falling asleep. So you want kind of the mix of both energy and calm. So that's something you can do right in the moment. People really, really like that. And one of the biggest keys to not being as nervous is you have to rehearse as if you're a singer rehearsing for a concert.
Okay, interesting.
So a lot of people, when they're practicing before they, let's say, give a presentation, or they have to speak before a meeting, or they have to go up on stage, they spend a lot of time just reading what they've written. They just plan what they're going to say. They type up some notes. They write down some notes. But this would be like, imagine your favorite musician, before they go on stage, they just write down a new song, but they've never actually sang it.
Interesting. Of course.
So saying the words out loud, rehearsing by actually saying the words out loud, is going to make the biggest difference, 10 times more difference than reading the words on a page. People don't do this because it's just not fun to do. It's easier to just skim some notes.
Of course.
But a lot of times we're nervous or we're not confident too because we're just unprepared.
Interesting.
If, for example, I came to your show here and I was a guest and I didn't know who I was talking to, I didn't know what we were talking about, I, let's say, showed up to the show and you were going to ask me questions about cooking. And I had no idea you were going to ask me about cooking. If I showed up and I had to talk about cooking, I'd be nervous. I wouldn't be confident because I wouldn't be prepared.
Yes, of course.
I'm also a terrible cook, and I barely do it.
Well, you and me both, Ty.
But if, let's say, you told me, okay, we're going to talk about cooking for this entire episode, and I spent some time. I'm like, okay, well, I don't cook much, but these are the things that I do cook. These are some things that other people do when they're cooking. I could show up and feel way more confident, even if I'm talking about something I don't know much about, just because I've not only prepared a little bit, but I've actually said the words out loud and practiced what I'm going to say verbally instead of just making a bunch of notes about cooking, reading them, then hoping for the best.
Right, right. And so these are very, very important tips that you just gave us. Breathing is important. Breathing and then visualizing your audience going successfully, your event going successfully, and of course, rehearsing. It's so underrated. I agree with that. It's rehearsing. It's like if you're going to sing, you rehearse, right? Why not talking? Why not speaking as well? And it reminds me of that movie, The King's Speech, where he had a lisp and he had to practice speech, and then he had to go through a communications coach, a speech coach, and whatnot. I love that movie. But again, it's so underrated. To Just because you know your material doesn't mean you don't have to rehearse it, right? Ty, it's quite the advice you've given us now, and again, I love that you have your book. Of course, it's called Elite Communication Skills, international best-selling, and you have your Advanced Growth Institute where you apply these same techniques, these same principles. You've helped over 36,000 individuals transform their communication skills. I'd love for you to share a success story. Anything that stands out that highlights the profound impact of your coaching on someone's career and or personal growth. We love stories on this show. Tell us one that really stands out with how you've helped them transform their lives through communication.
There's so many that come to mind. The first one that comes to mind is actually somebody that I just finished with last week. So on Friday
Interesting.
was her last session. So I'll share that one because that one's the freshest in my mind. So
Please,
I
please.
just finished, I just finished working with a woman. Her name is Kim, and she's in a leadership role in one of the top 3 biggest banks. So for Kim, there were certain meetings that she would just dread. And she's normally a pretty confident person, but when she has to speak in some of these more important situations or sometimes around these more important people, she'd sometimes feel anxious or she'd feel a little bit nervous or a bit overwhelmed. And then when it was time to speak, she'd sometimes find herself over explaining or rambling, just not being very clear.
Right.
And not getting her points across the way that she wanted to. So for anyone listening, if you can relate to that, you're having thoughts in your brain, you're in that moment, you're in that meeting, you're in that conversation, maybe there's some important people or some people around that you really value their opinion. And for some reason in those situations, that's when you speak at your worst.
Yes, yes.
Kim was that exact same way.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness.
And a lot of people I know can relate to that because they speak, for example, to their friends and they're calm.
Yes.
And they're like, I can speak to my friends, no problem, or my family, no problem. Or people at work, they're a little more junior. I have no problems talking to them. But now if I'm speaking to the CEO of our company or I'm speaking to our biggest client, now you're over explaining. Now your points aren't clear. Now you find yourself rambling a little bit. So it's a really common problem that a lot of my clients have because they've usually had some success in their career. So
Yes,
it's
of
not like they're
course.
struggling so much like early 20-year-old Ty was.
Yes, of
But they're at a point where because they're a little bit further in their careers, they know that people expect more of them.
Yes, of
They
course.
know they should be speaking better.
Yes.
So they're kind of hard on themselves when they're
It's
not
an added
speaking
pressure
at the
too,
level that they
right?
should
Because
be.
you have to be good. hmm Go ahead. Go ahead.
Totally added pressure. So anyone that's a high performer can probably relate to this too, right? Where you feel like I just know I should be doing better. Why did I say that? Why didn't I say that a little more clear? A lot of people can probably relate to that.
For
So with
sure, for
Kim,
sure.
after, for her, it would have been after 4 months of coaching. So she learned what we call the 3C communication formula, which is confidence, charisma, and clarity.
Okay.
And she had very high nervousness, anxiety, overwhelm when she'd started. And with communication, it's tough to measure changes sometimes with numbers. And so you can
Of
say,
course.
I feel so much better. You are a much better speaker. But we try to measure and track as many things as possible
Okay.
with our coaching. So for her, her nervousness decreased by 50%.
Okay.
And her confidence increased by 80%, which, as I said, was our average increase for confidence.
Okay.
So when she started, we had together rated her speaking skills at a 4 out of 10, and now we together rated them at an 8.5. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So
Interesting.
that sounds like, okay, a bunch of numbers, decrease, increase, that all sounds good. But the main thing is for her, she no longer dreads showing up to those meetings. And this might sound crazy, but she's actually excited to show up for work now because she's built the skills
Of
to
course.
confidently own the room no matter what room she's in and speak at a high level
Of course.
in any situation.
Of
So
course.
sometimes the most valuable things people find about improving these skills is, well, they get to show up to work every day and actually be excited to
Very
go and
cool.
speak and showcase their skills, have
Very cool.
impact on others, gain influence, gain respect, clearly and concisely communicate their ideas. And with the amount of time that we spend at work,
Yes. Yes.
how awesome is it that she can now show up to work not only not stressing and not being anxious, but actually being excited and being confident,
Right.
showing up to all these situations. So that's really the type of work that I do. And there's many different stories. That one was the most recent, and just really happy to see those changes because the quality of life
Absolutely.
that can be changed when you improve your communication skills, that's the most valuable part. You can get raises, you can get promotions, people get all that good stuff, but sometimes I think it's just the way that you show up and the way that you feel about yourself entering the world each day.
I absolutely agree with that, and I was going to say that how much transformation it takes, and I agree with the whole like quality of life improving. I truly believe that, I mean, I think, isn't it that like our most natural way of connecting with each other? And if you're not able to connect with others more effectively, I feel like it's much more difficult to kind of connect with yourself. And that means a lot to a person who, whether or not they started off as a bad communicator or not confident enough, finding that sense of self confidence when it comes to communication, I can feel how meaningful and substantial must be to all the individuals that you've helped. Of course, you've helped transform their lives, and it's I can't think of something more exciting. Of course, like I love what, I'm quite envious of what you do for someone, for me, who values communication as well. And seeing others wanting to succeed is, of course, a lovely experience and a lovely endeavor and noble thing that you do, I feel. um Ty, I'd love to give you this opportunity. Where can we connect with you? Where can we learn more about you? Of course, where can we find your book? But more than that, what is the future? What is the future aspirations of Thai, and how do you see Advanced Growth Institute moving forward in the future? Where can we learn more?
Absolutely, Joshua. So this has been great. I want to give something very special to your audience to say
Oh,
thanks for
please.
listening to our episode. Now, this is something I typically only give to paying clients, but as I said, I'm a big fan of the show. So if
Wow.
anyone is listening and you stayed till the end,
Hmm.
I want to give this away for free. It's what I call the CEO communication kit. So the first part of the kit is a course. It's called Speak Like a Confident Leader in 7 Days. So
Wow.
this course is for the person who they know that they have so much more potential in them, than what they've been showing the world. And they know that deep down they want to be a stronger, more confident leader. But when they open their mouth, they sometimes feel like they're not good enough. They don't feel as
Okay.
confident as they'd like. And they're not communicating in a way that really gets the higher level of results they want. So
Yes, of course.
that course is the first part of the CEO communication kit. And because you always inspire me, Joshua, by over delivering on the value that you give, I'm going to do the same for your audience
Wow.
for the second part of the kit. And so the second part of the kit is something I only give to my paying clients
Wow.
because it's that powerful. It's called the Secrets to CEO Level Presence.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Wow.
So if you're listening, I'm going to give you a free one-on-one coaching call with me personally. No strings attached, just as a gift for being a listener of the show. And so if you want to, number one, work on your CEO level speaking,
Okay.
and then number two, develop your CEO level presence, I'll personally work with you for 60 minutes so that you can command respect before opening your mouth. And then when you actually do open your mouth to speak, you speak at your best and you can make the most of it. So if you want this for free, you can just go to my Instagram or LinkedIn. Those are the two that I use most. And that's TyHoesgen. So it's Ty Hoesgen. I know my last name's a little bit tricky, so I'll say it again. TyHoesgen.
Okay.
And just message me the word CEO24. So I'll send it over to you. We'll book that call. It's the CEO communication kit. Just send me the word CEO24, Instagram or LinkedIn at Ty Hoesgen, and I'll personally send it over to you.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, to our audience and listeners out there, do not miss this opportunity. I'll get one myself. I'll definitely check that out. I invite everyone to check that out. Do not miss that one. Quite exciting. Thank you so much for the gift, of course, and we always love, that kind of support, that kind of all that, really, really valuable stuff that we could never take these things for granted. Of course, Ty, that's quite very cool of you to do. Thank you for that gift today.
My pleasure. Happy to do it.
All right, fantastic. Well, Ty, um, one last bit of information or wisdom, rather, one last bit of wisdom. Something for us to take home, and what is it that you would like to share our audience and listeners? Take us home.
One of the biggest things you can do that will impact your communication is to think about what you're going to say. Just take 1 second or 2 seconds and just pause, think about what you're going to say, and then start speaking. If you can structure what you're going to say and organize those thoughts and ideas just a little bit more than you would have. So, for example, maybe you're saying, here is the best strategy for us.
Yeah.
There are two reasons why I believe this is the best strategy.
Okay.
Number one reason, number two reason.
Okay.
That's why I believe this is the best strategy. So if you can structure it and say, okay, first I'm going to say what the strategy is.
Okay.
Then I'm going to give them two reasons. Then I'm going to restate what the strategy is. Okay, so I teach different frameworks, different structures, things like that.
Right.
And really, if you just take a little bit of time, instead of just jumping into answer immediately, take that moment, think, can I organize what's in my head and say it in a way that's easier to understand
Precisely.
for the other person? Less is more. 99% of people I work with speak too much and over-explain. So if you can try to be a little bit more concise and think about what you're going to say first, that's going to make a big difference.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. I love that. And I think that is something I feel like not just communication wise, or rather not just career wise. I think it would all benefit us to just stop, think about what we're going to say first. And I think it, just society at large, when we communicate more effectively that way, it also gives us room to empathize more, right? Like to understand the person a bit more, whoever we're communicating to, before actually just like blurting out everything. And I think that is quite fundamental to communication. Ty, thank you so much for coming on here. I truly love what you do, and I love that you're a fan of the show. I'm quite happy about that, of course. Ty, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me as a guest, Joshua. This was fantastic.
Fantastic. And to all our audience and listeners out there, I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did, as much as we did. And we'll see you on the next one.
All right, so here's the thing. We try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.